Hi Fidel, send me face on and try to get a better frame rate. Also try to trim slightly the video because it's kind of 10 minutes long on the V1, and sometimes cameras make me lose definition and frame rates, I think, sometimes if the video is too long. So try to trim it, face on, I really need this, and a better frame rate. Try to go above 120, it will be easier to see the club face and such. I am going to analyze this, but really don't send me anything for this analysis. It's not good enough. That's not how I work. I want to give you the best value, and if you like it, then send me something, but that's not how I work. There is a lot of things interesting here, so I'm gonna make this is gonna benefit people on the channel, so I will still publish this, but again, that's not the finished product, and send me another one. And a face on. Okay, so you were asking if PPT, which is posterior pelvic tilt, is desirable in the backswing. Okay, for people that are not familiar with the terms, APT is basically pointing the belt buckle down, so it's APT, it's anterior pelvic tilt, so it's getting this. It's also called lumbar lordosis, so increasing the lumbar lordosis, as you can see, is making my belt buckle point down, and if I go more into posterior pelvic tilt, decreasing this lumbar lordosis, my belt buckle points up. There is also the terms LPT, which is left pelvic tilt, and right pelvic tilt. That's something that's also the terms I would use here. Anyway, you have to also acknowledge that APT, anterior pelvic tilt, in a golf swing is typically tied with hip flexion. It's technically possible to be in lumbar lordosis and be in hip extension, but that's really not something that's possible in a golf swing. So typically in a golf swing, to be functional, APT and hip flexion go hand in hand, and PPT and hip extension go hand in hand. So, okay. The other terms I will use here is left lateral bend and right lateral bend, so don't confuse it with tilt and secondary axis tilt and such, which are not really referring to what the spine is doing. So it's basically a bend in the spine, so here it's left lateral bend, it's right lateral bend, sorry. Here you can see that my shoulders are tilting, and that my pelvis and my shoulders are not on top of each other anymore. So that's something that's happening. So this would be left lateral bend, this would be right lateral bend. You can cheat this with scapular movements, so movements happening here in the scaps. So try to not re-cheat that, try to have something happen in the spine really. And basically you can also try to crunch the ribs of this side or stretch the ribs on the other side, and that's going to give you left and right lateral bend. Anyway, so you were asking me if you need to go LPT, not LPT, if you need to go PPT, so posterior pelvic tilt on the backswing. Definitely that's desirable. You need to err on the PPT side on the backswing. Why? Because if you are in anterior pelvic tilt and hip flexion, you want to go PPT and extension in the downswing, and that's really not good for rotation, that's not good for the spine. You're typically going to end up here under the plane, have the right path, and I mean, that's not good. So yeah, typically try to err on the, to conserve, to get PPT on the backswing and try to keep it intact. That's also better for the hip movements on the left side and on the right side, and it's also going to make you kind of rise up instead of dipping down on the downswing, on the backswing. So that's all these things are desirable. It's not really possible to err on too much PPT. I mean, it's something I rarely, I'm almost never seen that. So going over crossing the line on PPT on the backswing is not really possible. I haven't seen that yet. Okay, you were also asking what are the phases in the backswing. You need to load the right heel and then develop left lateral bend, or the other. Actually, that's not how it works. It's happening in sync. If you left lateral bend, you will typically have the pelvis open slightly, and you will load the right heel automatically. That's not really possible to be left lateral bend and have the weight go to the right toe. I mean, it's not how it's happened. So if you get left lateral bend, typically your pelvis will open, exactly the same as the duck drill, where we want the sacrum moving away from the target and having right lateral bend in lower doses. It's making the pelvis rotate counterclockwise, and in the backswing is the contrary. You go left lateral bend, it's making the pelvis rotate slightly clockwise. It's not exactly as powerful move as in the downswing, because the facets of the vertebrae are not pushing on each other. So for those who are not familiar with this, go to Calvin's articles, and I'm going to try to explain this. If you go anterior pelvic tilt, APT, lumbar lordosis, the facets of the vertebrae are pushing each other. So if you go this plus right lateral bend is going to make your pelvis open. It's not as powerful, it's not how powerfully happening in the backswing, because as I said, you're kind of PPT and the facets of your vertebrae are not pushing on each other, but it's still happening. If you go into a slight left lateral bend, typically your pelvis will want to open, to go clockwise, and it's gonna make you load the right heel too. So it's not like there is phase one, put weight on the right heel and then develop left lateral bend, or the other. It's happening in sync. Okay, folks, you can take a lot of things that Castro is doing in the backswing, which are really nice. Okay, so Castro, sorry, it's Fidel. That's his nickname, and it's anyway. So Fidel is doing a lot of things right on the backswing. Anyway, what you can see here is that the head is moving up, so that's happening because posterior pelvic tilt is present, because left lateral bend is happening, and because he's not dipping down trying to create rotation or flex or load the backswing. That's not how it works. That's not how the most powerful swings are built. There is typically a slight upload, and it's happening very soon. This is for ED, which would be my next analysis, I think. ED, you're doing this in the wrong order. You're kind of developing left lateral bend and then rising up, which is making you have a few problems. So this is how it needs to be done. So typically an upload in the first part of the backswing, of the takeaway. Hints for left lateral bend. What can you see here? You can see that the tush line is present. It's conserved. You can see that the left hip is also high. If you want the hip down, it will be very hard to have hip down and left lateral bend. I mean, your shoulders are going to be that much tilted. I mean, that's not happening. So if you are in left lateral bend, typically your left hip will stay high. The amount of knee bend in the left knee and in the left hip will be minimal. What you will also see is that the thorax is shaped like that way. It will always have something like this. It's never going to be perfectly there, because there is a shoulder here that's giving us this kind of rounded appearance here. That's inevitable. So this is desirable. We can see that the head also moved slightly off the ball, which is good. It moved up, which is good. This is on the tush line, which is good. This left hip is high and this torso is shaped like so. The shoulders are tilted. Okay, the shoulders, be careful. You can cheat that by doing scap movements. So this is moving up and this is moving down. Even though these are required moves. It's part of the good scapular movements. You can cheat that and end up with very tilted shoulders with not so much happening in the spine. And you can also cheat that by going sagging on the left side. So if I sag there, my spine is straight and I still have this kind of torso. And the last possibility to cheat on this has to do with the amount of internal rotation of the right shoulder. If you are way more internally rotated in the right shoulder, you can see that this makes it bulge out, and that can give you this kind of shape here. But this is not what's happening here with Fidel, so great job on the backswing. I really need to see your grip because I need to figure out how much internal rotation of left shoulder you have here. And also this club face, even though it's good, I mean it's shudder, it's more shut than people would advise, which is really something I like. I need to know how it's created. Club is slightly laid off, but you're not at the top, so if you were perfectly at the top, I think you would be perfect. Again, don't really be too focus on this kind of laid off or cross the line position, because you can trick that with supination movements, everything. You can cheat that with UD, you can cheat that with bowing, and you can cheat that with left lateral bend or right lateral bend. So this is pretty neutral. I like that. I mean, you can be either way, I wouldn't mind, as long as it's coherent with the proper elements in the spine. So here, people, you will see that he rebounds from left lateral bend into right lateral bend, and that's basically giving him a free ride for his elbow going here. We want, in the first stages of the transition, we want the elbow to be as soon as possible in front of the right hip, and he's doing that nicely. So his elbow is going that way, and that's good for lag creation, for I mean, if you are extended and if you are internally rotated, that's definitely not looking good. So you definitely want the elbow in front of the right hip or very close to it, and not getting stuck here, as this will destabilize your impact. But you get a free ride. I mean, people typically want to have external rotation of the shoulder, big elbow bend, to have this elbow in front. Well, this is not a pitch in baseball. We're not launching from here. We have to get somewhat down. So these movements can be overdone and can lead to bad problems. If it's done properly, if you are in left lateral bend going into right lateral bend, you can see that something's happening here. And I get a free ride for the elbow move. So again, good job from Fidel. This is where it will get problematic, Fidel, and this is why I will need to have a face on, because I need to see what's happening here in the left shoulder. I need also to see the grip more in the impact area. And okay, Fidel has a very toned down lower body action in the end of the downswing. You can see from here to impacts, nothing really happens. It's just going along for the ride. This is very flat-footed. You're doing a good job. I mean, you're flexible and such. So you manage to keep the touch line, even though your right lateral bend is not really great. And I need to have face on to figure out why it's happening. Again, send me face on if you didn't understand it already. Anyway, okay. What's really not ideal here is that we can see that his right elbow is going to extend quite a bit, actually. If I had face on, I would say it's perfectly extended at impact, which is not good. So I think Fidel, well, he's young. I think he's playing for quite a while now. In my opinion, his brain has figured out a way to have functional impact conditions. So the height of the torso, the amount of the bend in the right elbow, the flip, everything extends the swing arc, and it needs to match up. And the other thing that needs to match up is the ball flight pattern. And typically, the other thing that we can see here is that his left arm is pointing very much right of the target. I don't mind that, but it's going to be sucked in, sucked in, sucked in, and even though it happens to everyone, this, in my opinion, is too much, and it's also making the impact unstable. I would need face on to confirm, but in my opinion, you are not using the left shoulder properly. So I think you are ADD, adduction, instead of abduction. You are rotating the left shoulder externally. Why? I don't know. I would like to see the face, but again, not in a frame rate. I would like to see the grip to see how much range of motion you have in the closing area, because sometimes people are a bit open and they have used up all the fuel here and they need to square the club face a bit more, and so they flip a bit to close it, and they also rotate the left shoulder to close it. So I need to see all this to have an idea what's happening. Could be also that you're just going ADD, and with ADD external rotation comes with it. It can also mean that you're very, very flexible and that your elbow extended on, and because the triceps is attached to the shoulder, it has an action, and it's, if you hyperextend, it's going to go into ADD and external rotation. That's just how it happens. We need this motion in human body. We don't need this motion in the human body. So with triceps, with elbow extension, it goes here. We can use the hands, we can do something, we can push something, and external rotation needs to be there. Never going to do something like that. I mean, it's not physiologically, it's nonsense. Again, if we pull, we need to pull on something. We need to be internally rotated, have the elbow rise, the left shoulder to go outward, so abduction, and the left elbow to bend if we pull on something. So this is also physiological, but if you're not using this for X or Y reason, this is not impact stability. So last time I need face on. Okay, I swear, last time. Again, what's happening here in the sorry, I'm drawing like shit. What's happening here in the spine? I think you could get way more right lateral bend. You're doing a pretty good job not losing the touch line and not sagging too much in right pelvic tilt, but that's not ideal. Maybe that's a way to kind of extend up and have more room to widen the swing arc with your right elbow extension, with the flip that comes with it. And I mean, it's difficult. It's a chicken and the egg question, and I really need to see the rest of the swing. Lower body is not behaving properly. I mean, it's very toned down. You could get much more out of it. I really think this is not a wedge, so there's no reason to be so toned down, flat-footed. Maybe it's also good because it could mean that you're not sliding that much if you manage to stay that flat-footed. So maybe that's not perfectly 100% wrong per se, but definitely could be improved. The last thing that's happening is that, I mean, I think I need to have more frame to it. In my opinion, this is a very high club face. I'm going to explain this. Well, there is two theories. Well, there is two theories that some people use, which is RIT, right inward throw release, and it's typically, you typically need to have a high club head and stay into radial deviation and have the club head match the shaft angle at the rest, and then move left, everything moves left, and the club head stays high. And the contrary would be LOP, left outward pull, which would include more UD, ulnar deviation, the club face staying low, and then flipping over. I'm not really fond of these theories. I think a lot of movements can happen. It's not one or the other. But I think in UD, movements are way more restricted, and it's easier to control the club face. If you are in radial deviation like so, it's much easier to have the thing flip over, and I mean a ton of moves in the wrist are available here. If you are here, not so much in my opinion. So that's something that we could work on. I need to understand what's happening, and also need to see your left hip management, your right hip management, and that would be the last time I'm talking about face on, but I would see that on face on. Again, we want this right heel to lift a bit. We will want more right lateral bend. We would want more more right elbow bend. I think we would want more IR on the left shoulder, kind of more bent elbow. I think we will see a very ADD, externally rotated, very straight left elbow. This is my take on your swing. Again, not really the type of quality video I want to provide, but I mean, I'm trusting you. You will shoot the last videos that I need, and I see you in a next video. Cheers.